MySlimNation.com.
Good morning, I'm Sean Murphy. Clouds to start today and then sunshine and in the 50s for a high. A driver who struck a state police cruiser yesterday morning on Interstate 395 in Waterford was stopped on I-95 South and Old Lyme after troopers used stop sticks, state police said. One person is in custody and the trooper involved was not injured. The highway, which was temporarily closed between exits 71 and 70, is since reopened. A Norwich man has pleaded guilty to sexually assaulting two underage girls and will serve 5 years in prison. 31-year-old Jose G. Gonzalez Jamirez confessed to the crimes at a police station in 2023, prompting an investigation that uncovered a second victim. He will be sentenced on June 9th to 12 years, suspended after 5 years with 10 years of probation. A Plainfield man has pleaded guilty to charges related to a 2021 burglary at Eddie's Place in Moosop and faces up to 3.5 years in prison. Police say 54-year-old Michael Moon broke into the restaurant, stole cash from the register, and caused $4,100 in damage. Moon, who's also pleaded guilty to evading responsibility in an unrelated 2023 hit-and-run crash, awaits sentencing in both cases. The town of Stonington is seeking resident input through a survey to help shape the upcoming update of the Plan of Conservation and Development. The survey, available online and in paper form at Town Hall, is available to take until April 7th. Additionally, the Planning and Zoning Commission is looking to appoint 2 residents to the POCD Steering Committee with interviews set for April 15th. Demolition of the Washington Bridge continues as RIDOT crews work on the bridge pier with closures impacting Gano Street at the I-195 overpass. Alternating lane closures will occur throughout the week from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. through the Gano Street on-ramp to I-195, which will remain open. RIDOT advises drivers to expect delays and plan accordingly. I'm Sean Murphy. When news breaks, we break in.
The Seat of Honor. Brought to you by Densmore Oil and Bugby Plumbing. He's up late to give you the news you can't get anywhere else early. He fights for truth and justice and the American way. Please welcome our pal from the Paragon Trust Company, the real Tony D. Tony D'Angelo.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. 7 minutes after the hour of 7 o'clock, and our very good pal Tony D'Angelo joins us every Tuesday at the same time. You can't find him at Tony D'Angelo 7 on the X. Of course, there's a YouTube page as well. He unleashes one fantastic video every single week. It's a must-watch. And Tony is, first, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Elci. Good morning, everyone. I'm proud to be among you.
And today's the day you're just gonna blowtorch everyone, right? That's
Not put it this way. I mean, it's the time of year where I'm actually getting a lot of face-to-face time in, and whatever our politicians do, especially it seems like Republicans at all levels, to entertain themselves, real life here hangs in the balance. And our network news said today that Congress is very concerned about, do you want to meet in Zoom or do you want to meet in person, and how terrible this all is, and meanwhile the country's hanging by a thread. And if I could get rid of one pet peeve here, and just this whole whatever you want to call it, global policy failure, I'm tired of Chris Murphy running around yelling about billionaires and billionaires breaks and things like that. I have practically held Republicans by the shoulder and told them, idiot. What you need to do is remind this man constantly that he did not vote once against 20%. tax cuts for business, which small business now has, but he voted against it twice. And when the Trump bill comes again, that's another story, he's going to vote for it again. I mean, it's like he convinces people of stuff that is fiction, and it's not like it's rocket science to tell him, you're an idiot, you don't know what you're doing, but they just let this guy pontificate on. It happens at all levels. And it's like he's like the Blob. The bigger you let him get, the more dangerous he's going to become in his own idiocy. But what this kind of like, when I see this, namby-pamby spat crap in Congress, what really troubles me here is that Congress is really hanging by a thread. And the thread really is like, the Trump agenda, everything he campaigned on, all these things that we looked at and said, yeah, the country really needs. We got special elections coming up today. The network news mentioned it. 2 in Florida, 1 in Texas, and 1 in Arizona. Now, it's an outside shot, but if it's a possibility that all these seats flip blue, we're looking at a 218, 217, and man, that is close. Trump was cavalier about it. I'll give this guy an ambassadorship. Oh, I'll give her but it's like, hey, wait a minute. This is really where reality is. And what really troubles me is like where the country's hanging by a thread, where we really need stuff to move. I mean, we need a tax bill by Memorial Day. People need to know as they're barbecuing that my taxes are going down, my fuel costs are going down, my eggs are going down, but we watch all this stupid stuff. And I mean, there's 3 tools. Again, this is me holding Republicans by the shoulder and yelling at them that are in the Republican toolbox. Damn it, use them. You have to extend the 2017 tax cuts. You want to spend more taxes this year? You want to next year? Be my guest. I don't. That 100% expensing of business assets. I mean, that will create its own energy, and then fossil fuel development. But man, oh man, it's like I'm watching a comic book, and I'm just getting so tired of it.
Well, I mean, such is the
reading a comic book.
Yeah,
I can't read. I watch.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right. So you're again. I agree with all of what you're saying.
Yeah, and I mean, and if this thing crashes, we know who's to blame.
Right.
Basically, that's what it is.
And they want it to crash.
I don't get it. I mean, it's like, don't you realize what's really happening out there in the real world? I mean, it's a disconnect, which I think kind of brings us to our next subject. Watching with interest, March 27, 2025, I saw that the Connecticut Senate Republicans had a press conference addressing the culture of corruption. We're hearing a lot these days. It's kind of interesting about transparency, accountability, DOJ, and it's really hitting like a visceral sense of people who are just tired of paying and paying and paying more and getting less and less, and seeing people get richer and richer. And this the conference, and following it. The Senate elected Stephen Harding, Vincent Candelora. They cited a couple of things that have been quote unquote in the as we say on 30 with Tony the legitimate media on and these are real scandals. I mean the Terrence Chang thing at SCU. Deidre Gifford and that whole thing with tied into Diamandis, and then the Social Equity Council grants and a couple of things like that. And I read it and I said, because there was a thing going back and forth on Twitter. And, one of my Twitter group members started to say, well, what about Semaphore? What about the digital currency group? What about Advanced CT? What about, all the things we have covered here? And, the Yukon Foundation, the Horse Barn Hill Investment Fund, how does 12% of an endowment end up in a Cayman Islands fund in a tax-exempt foundation? Do the Lamonts have anything to do with that, considering they are well vested in the Cayman Islands? No, you never hear about anything like that. And it's my post of that, which came after the fact, was just engendered a whole lot. I mean, people aren't stupid. People know what's happening. People see. Really, it's like you just can't deal with something superficially. I mean, it's like rot on a car. A little bit of a rust spot on my car. I'll just go home and paint it. Then you stick your finger through it and you see how far it's gone. But basically, I mean, this is, and I'm just saying to myself, how can you make, this is me talking to myself, Lee Elci, how could you make a statement of like, we've got to fix all the corruption, yet there's all this other stuff which is never, ever done. Now semaphore, okay, you could say that's old business, but is it? We're going to look at that in a moment, but the fact of the matter is, do we want to see that happen again? Do we want to see a digital currency group happen again? What are we doing to stop that from happening again, or can it happen tomorrow? We'll look at that in a moment. But it's like, Advanced CT, they're doing state business. It is exempt from freedom of information. Why? The unaccountable's entourage went to India under the cloak of Advanced CT. Why? Well, no stuff, Sherlock. You don't get to disclose what's in there if you do that. It's like, this is acceptable to you Republicans? I'm sorry, that's not acceptable to me. It's not acceptable to the people, like on this show, my show, the people I talk to on Twitter. People are not stupid. That's basically what it is. Digital currency group, what happened there? What can we learn? I mean, does there have to be some payback here? And it's just the kind of thing of, I just became very angry within myself. But there's another level here. There's actually several. If you're going to get to corruption, this is my point this past week, you got to get at all the corruption. You just can't say, well, these are, quote unquote, before I go on, Vincent Candelora had mentioned the appointment of an inspector general to look at this. Stick a pin there. We'll come back to it later. Now, but if you're going to get at all this, what about the nonprofit gravy train in this state? I was running some numbers. If you're interested in sites, I can get them for you. But about $150 million and 1,000 fundings to nonprofits in Connecticut. Why? Who? How many do we need? Who's involved? How many cronies are being fed? Drug rehabilitation charities. $50 million and 100 organizations. Like, we can't get by with like 20. I mean, we're like a very small state here. I mean, we need all these administrations. Domestic violence is a biggie. It's like the more we spend on it, it seems like the more domestic violence we got. I mean, I'm not making a joke, but you have to ask yourself something. 50 organizations, $10 million. Can we have like 10 or 5? And this is the kind of thing that, if you're going to say, you can't tell me that you want to fight corruption and all this other stuff happening with nonprofits is automatically clean and green. And it's just like, if you're going to get to it, you got to get to the bottom of it. But something I came across really, and I mean, there are times I want to go on eBay and I want to buy a Derringer like Elvis Presley had and start shooting out screens because this drove me absolutely crazy. Someone needs to explain it to me. Republican, speaking of transparency, accountability, and things like that, on the Senate Republican site, there is a company called MTU Aero Engines North America. They're expanding and having a hiring push. 3 senators make a statement. Jeff Gordon, ranking senator of the Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, Stephen Harding, and Henry Martin, and talking about this great job growth that's going to happen. Now, who do they cite in this job growth? They cite Advanced CT. They cite the secret nonprofit. They cite where we can't get to the numbers, right? And the Connecticut Department of Economic Development. Well, it's like, what has the Connecticut Department of Economic Development done other than hand out millions of dollars to Lamont projects and other projects? And, we're still 49th in the United States and American workforce. So it's like, where are the facts, gentlemen? Where are the reports? Where is the information? Where is the disclosure? Are you going to make me go for freedom of information? Well, if I do, I'll get a response 6 months later saying, well, this is in negotiations. We can't give it to you yet. I mean, if you're going to talk about corruption, you got to deal with something like that. You can't hide under a cloak of officiality. And it is just such a, I don't know what you want to call it, Lee Elci. I don't know if you want to call it a double standard. I don't know if you want to call it an acceptance of failure, but you can't keep doing the same failed things and ending up, believing that you're going to end up someplace and thinking we don't see it, thinking that, I might do like 2% of this. My people on Twitter are unbelievable. And let alone the callers on this show, some of whom, are on Twitter, are 9 o'clock callers. And it's like, where are the financial reports? Where is the information? What the hell is going on here? Now, this is going to create a lot of jobs, right? This is going to create, this is going to change the world. Guess how many jobs are created in this thing that we can't see? Take a wild guess.
I have no idea.
100 over 5 years. 100. And the unaccountable, our governor, King Governor Ned Lamont, the unaccountable, went to Germany and came back. Well, Elci, I could do 100 jobs in 5 years if I chose to, and I don't need any help.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, and so it's just this whole thing of if you want to, hey, listen, guys, you want to get to corruption, this is what you do. And this whole thing of the inspector general, we need an inspector general. Well, why do you need an inspector general, Vincent Candelora? Because this way, if somebody like me goes and raises something to the inspector general, he can say, well, that's not important. I don't want to look at these things. It's a buffer for them to keep from us. Why save the money? Save it. Just throw the facts up contemporaneously on the sites, on the disclosures. Let people ask the questions directly. What are you afraid of? Or are you afraid of something and you don't want to let us see it? I mean, honestly, truthfully, the level of acuity here and the level of analysis, and this is really, I thank my people on Twitter. I thank the people on this show, most especially the people on the video show. They're paying attention, and they know where to look, and they know how to go. And, this has gone on for too long. If you didn't say anything, if you didn't say, I want to stop corruption, I wouldn't be half as upset as I am if I'm even upset. This is kind of like my normal these days, but wherever you want to go, my friend.
What would you have? What would be a better course of action? Yeah, well, for the Republicans. I watched that. They tried to call out the corruption. What would be next in your mind? What should they do?
Number one, call out everything. Open the door. Invite people in. Now, it's not only me. There's a lot of other people with much greater contributions than I have made. Invite all of them in. And it's like, let us look at this. Let us look at that. What do we need to do? Well, honestly, guys, if you're going to go and say you got this job development thing, you've got to put the figures out there so we can see it and find out what's happening so we could question. You can't make a statement, and this is the equivalent of, writing I'll be very polite here because I know we have good people in the audience. This is the equivalent of writing a check that your rear end can't cash. Okay. Simple as that, and just as difficult.
All right, so they should be more specific then in what they go after, too?
More open, more, take into account everything.
Okay.
Everything. What about, that's a crisis with the nonprofits in the state. How many people do we have doing the same thing? Getting, very generous salaries, more than you might make or I might make. And, that's tax money. Our taxes go up. What are we funding? What is the benefit to the citizen, or is the benefit to the people who are getting paid by the citizen? Right. And that's kind of where I'm at.
I'm thinking as you're saying this, I'm thinking, okay, so Doge is basically a group of brilliant people who are searching through the waste fraud.
Yeah.
Right. So unfortunately, Connecticut doesn't really have that. Maybe if somehow, some way, the Republicans could employ somebody to go
get rid of the whole. I'm going to call it farcical inspector general idea. Get a bunch of a college of cardinals of really concerned citizens, people who really are not faceless, nameless bots on Twitter. That's what Democrats do. But people who will challenge the status quo to say, hey, this isn't acceptable. This is where we can save money.
All right.
Really. I'm not saying this to quote unquote assault what's happened, but you just can't have this thing of, well, hey, we get this aerospace company and we have no facts, we have no figures, we don't know what they're doing, we don't know how much aid is there, and not only that, but it's going to create the grand total of 100 jobs in 5 years. And what did we pay, Lee Elci, for those jobs? What did we pay for the digital currency jobs? We went through that. It's like, well, they created all these jobs. Yeah, the state gave them the money to create the jobs and then forgave the loan. I mean, it's like this is no longer acceptable.
Tony D'Angelo, you can follow him on the X, Tony D'Angelo 7. Did we leave anything on the table?
No, I believe we're okay. We'll have a great 30 with Tony coming up on Thursday, and we'll be talking about more of the same thing. And I want to thank everybody because they're really they're providing me with a lot of inspiration and a lot of focus, and I'm very grateful to everyone.
Well, you got to go on there and watch that every Thursday. On Tony's YouTube page, of course, but in even more, you got to follow him on the X, Tony D'Angelo 7. Follow him there. Tony, thank you, sir.
Thank you, pal. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, have a good one. We'll come right back, everybody. Flax will join me next. Liz Karanowitz a little later on, and Professor William Clyde in the 9 o'clock hour. All coming up here on the radio. Hang on.